I think in the last few years, there's been a lot more focus on the emotion around money because there are a lot of great software tools that do the math for you. I don't need to sit in front of a client with a calculator anymore. And so helping to work through the math, that's kind of table stakes where you can build the financial modeling, you can build the investment analysis for clients in a minute. And what makes somebody different in this industry is the ability to connect with them and to help them connect with the emotion around money. In our industry are those people skills, those connecting skills, those relating skills, the empathy, the listening, all of those different skill sets. And if you can do that, and if you care, then when a client that you care about asks you about a tax question, you're going to go research it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Performance Financial Advisor Podcast. I'm delighted today to welcome Emily Rassam, formerly Emily Casey, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
So Emily stands out as a true leader in the wealth management world. So I was really excited to invite her on. So recognised by Investopia in their 100 top financial advisors list in 2023 for her work at Archer Investment Management in Charlotte. What I really liked about Emily's story is a blend of high-touch client service, educational outreach, and pro bono work in women's shelters, and consistent high performer in advisor metrics. So really looking forward to getting stuck in. Emily, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me. I'm pleased to be here.
No problem at all. Was that a good introduction? It's always interesting when I read people's backgrounds. Are you thinking that's true, that's not true? Or are you thinking, wow, I've done so much, I'm so pleased with myself?
Yeah, it's always interesting because when I've applied for different awards, and I just applied for one on Friday, they always ask you what your biggest accomplishments have been in your career. And it's funny because the first things that pop into my head are not what people would typically put on a resume. And so my answer for the most recent one I just applied for is one of the Investment News awards that will go out next year, is I thought about a client who was very frugal for 5-6 years. I was working with her and just wouldn't spend money, just terrified. And I got her to take a trip to Italy. And that was just such a big accomplishment. It was just like a woo kind of moment for me in my career. And I just think of these different moments that you help people create feel like the highlights and not the awards or the specific recognition. Like those are the meaningful moments that pop into my head when I have to answer those questions.
That's amazing. So I think obviously this is, the High Performance Financial Advisor podcast. And one of the things that I think is really key is that high performance isn't necessarily AUM, is it? It is those moments. So I guess the question is, what does high performance mean to you, and how do you continue to reach the performance levels that you need to be a high performer?
Yeah. I always like to come at this profession as an educator, as a thought partner for my clients, as somebody who is just a helper. And so when I think of how I want to show up in this business is being kind, being thoughtful, being caring, loving my clients, taking care of them. And I've grown my business tremendously. We've turned away more clients than we've accepted this year. And so I think that when you show up and give, and when you show up and care, and you're connecting with people that you truly love and care about, it helps with, just growing your business and receiving those referrals, and people sense that in this profession. I think it's a really cool profession that we have the ability to do that.
So just obviously I've given a little introduction. Tell us a little bit about you, your firm, and what you stand for, and how you've got there, I think is what we'd like to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So 19 years into this business, I started my career in big firms. So I worked for larger firms for a lot of the time. A few years ago, when my son was 5 months old, I determined that I really wanted to focus on work-life balance, spending time with my young son, and he's now 4 years old. I have also have a 2-year-old now, and I wanted to be able to kind of carve myself out a little bit, where when you work for a larger firm, they really just want you to grow for growth's sake. And I was taking on a lot of leadership roles and coaching other advisors in the firm and leading different departments. And I just wore a lot of hats. And so said, what do I really love the most? What do I really enjoy and want to do more of? And that was really deep, high level financial planning, high touch financial planning for a select number of clients. So rather than doing everything for everyone, I kind of figured out this is who I love to serve and who I want to spend my time working with. So I wanted to work for a small RIA firm that would focus on mental health, work-life balance, and cared about me as a human and would let me, I didn't want to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. I had a young family, that I wanted to focus on. So I really kind of carved myself out, and I had made the decision at the time to say, okay, I'm going to take a cut in pay. I'm going to step back or sidestep in my career because I need to do what's best for me. And what's really interesting about that is I took that leap and I couldn't take my clients with me. They had to find me. That's how our business works, right? So you have to just leave and trust the process and trust that everything will be okay. And I ended up in a much better place where I'm focused on the clients that I really do want to work with and care about, attracting a lot of those similar type clients, focused on also spending time with my family. And I have been able to grow my business significantly and grow my compensation, and all of that worked out much better than I expected. So I made the decision that felt right for me, and it ended up working out better than I expected it to.
Brilliant. There's a few bits to dissect there because I'm really interested in some of the things you've said there. So I guess talking about making that move and trying to find a firm that focused on mental health, focused on you, how easy was that? And yeah, how easy was that to find, I guess, because there's so much focus on what AUM can you bring, which as a UK person coming over, and I find that like really strange. There seems to be more focus on people's clients than there is on the actual person when hiring, which I find extraordinary. So how easy was it for you to find a firm that wasn't just about how much clients you could bring and cared about you raising your family and all those different things you needed? How easy was that? And any advice you'd give to anyone looking to do the same?
Yeah, I had a lot of conversations with different advisors in my network, talked to some of the larger firms, explored the idea of starting my own RIA, really just had a lot of conversations in a short period of time. I also talked to other friends that did either go out on their own or join another small RIA just to kind of find out, how did that work out for them? How did they vet that out? But I got really lucky. I mean, I ended up, my now business partner, Richard Archer, had started this great firm, Archer Investment Management, small boutique firm. He really didn't have those demands. And I was asking about, what would you expect out of me from a growth perspective? And what types of clients do you serve? And I really got the sense very early on that it was more about finding kind of a select number of the right clients than just saying yes to everything and everyone and just taking growth for growth's sake. So that was important to me. And he did say to me in our very first conversation, he said, mental health's really important to me. And so
Fantastic.
and it's really rung true too. Every single person on our team has a family, and, we're not the type of team that's going to make our teammate miss a soccer game or something that's important to them, being able to, step away and trick or treat with our kids on Friday afternoon and handle some of the different things that pop up, or to be there for our sick kids. We're a fully virtual firm. We have flexible schedule. It's worked out very well. And there's not that demand on growth that's there, but it's just come naturally. It's just worked out when you really are in the right place and you are happy and supported and have the right technology and great marketing behind you. It all just kind of clicks together anyways.
Brilliant. So what you're saying there, I guess, which I love, is there's not a focus and a push on growth, but growth has happened because you've created an environment and they've allowed you to be happy and free and do what you need to do. So the growth comes as a result of the environment they've created. Is that what you're saying there, I guess?
Yeah, that's right. So I had a prospective client meeting last week and I was explaining what we do and our services. And she said, you really love what you do, don't you? And so it's
Amazing.
just that kind of rings true. If you take care of people and take care of those around you and kind of come into this industry with that giving heart, then I think that does kind of flow through, to that end user, to that client.
So obviously being a mother of a 2 and a 4-year-old, I remember those days. Very, very hard. I don't know if my kids, when they were that age, they did not sleep ever. So how have you balanced being a mother? Because we are in a male dominated industry, right? We know that. Obviously there's not as much appreciation, I guess, of the challenges of motherhood. How have you balanced motherhood and still being successful, I guess? I know you've mentioned some of the things you mentioned earlier, but how have you found that because it's not easy, is it? It was always, I think, historically, career or being a parent or being a mother. Whereas now, thankfully, the world is better where you can be both. But what have you found, and what advice to anyone that's about to venture on that sort of that process, I guess, because there's a balance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I always like to use the term work-life harmony because I don't think they're never in balance. I'm never spending equal time in either place. And balance still feels like you're on a tightrope and you're kind of trying to balance that still doesn't feel
Yeah.
like happy and comfortable. So I feel like it needs to be harmony. And really what I do is I try to protect and block my calendar to make sure I'm able to drop the kids off for their school and able to carve out time for things that matter and block my calendar and really work around that. So just having that dedicated time and space with them. I have special one-on-one time with each kid each week. And so making sure that I feel good about showing up for them. And then the other thing is trying to not try to do both at the same time. I feel like my points of stress come from trying to at the exact same time trying to work and help a 4-year-old open his snack and do these other things. And when I'm
Yeah.
splitting my time at the exact same time. So I work from home, but I shut my door and I work. And when I'm done with that, I step out and I'm fully 100% mom. And I give them that direct, intentional time with me. And I find that that's what makes me feel good. When I'm trying to answer something on my phone or look at email or try to answer a call when I'm around with them, that's what's really hard. So for me, it's just making sure that the door stays shut and I'm able to really close off and work. And when I'm really kind of plugged in, glued into work, I can really bang out a lot of work when I'm not distracted. So really try to just be intentional about blocking my time for that.
Well, the big question is, what's the biggest challenge? A really tricky, frugal client that won't spend, or a 4-year-old that doesn't want to eat the dinner that you've cooked them? Which one? What are the skills that you need for both of those negotiations that you've adopted? I think that's which one's harder, do you think, for you to work on, the 4-year-old or the frugal client?
It's so funny because as I've been, a parent in these last few years. I went 15 years in this career with no kids and then I had kids. And becoming a mom and parenting stubborn toddlers has helped me become a better advisor because you think a little bit more about your approach to certain situations. Like I have to game plan, how am I going to get these shoes on these kids and get them out the door? And how are they feeling? And how do I connect to the emotion that they are feeling? Because if you just say, hey, we got to go, and you start to rush them, that actually backfires, right? So same thing with clients, it's taking time. I was just at the dinner table with my husband recently, kind of telling him about a client meeting. And I was saying, you know what, I can see it's going to take me a couple of years to get them to this place because the two of them were not on the same page in this relationship, in this couple that I spoke to. And I said, it's going to take a little while, but I can see this path to get them there. So both of them have slightly different goals and feelings about money, and it's not something that's going to be immediate. So it's a lesson in, being patient and seeing, how do we get somebody where they need to go, whether it's shoes on and out the door and you're a toddler, or having good, healthy relationship and conversation around money. There's a strategy to that. There's a little bit of chess playing that needs to happen. It's a little bit of understanding and maybe empathizing with their emotion and how they're feeling, and then moving them in that direction carefully and slowly and not being too pushy. So I think it works in both
Amazing.
cases.
Brilliant. So when you think about your performance and where you've come from and to, and you mentioned you had 15 years where you weren't a mother and 4 as a mother. Now, what are the things that you do on a daily basis or weekly basis that create that success for you? Are there any sort of essential daily, weekly habits that you have to keep the level of performance that you need to get?
Yeah, it's finding time for myself because the time that I spend at work is devoted to my work and my clients. So my number of hours that I work might not be as much as they were in previous firms and previous lives, but I have to, when I sit down, I need to just focus and do a lot of work. And when I'm with my kids, I open my office door and I'm immediately mom and addressing them and addressing their needs. And so it's finding that time for myself. And for me, I have a big love for audiobooks and podcasts. And so being able to just go for a walk and immerse myself in audiobooks. And the big treat for myself is fiction. So being able to just kind of escape into someone else's story and somebody else's world and spend that time and just move my body and walk. Those are things that keep me centered. And if it's rainy and I haven't been walking out there or I haven't been able to listen to my books, I can sense that difference. Those things bring me joy. So it's carving out that time and then just taking care of myself and making sure that I'm eating well and drinking water and taking care of my own mental health, because I spend a lot of my time listening to clients' needs and concerns and stressors and reading market headlines and political headlines and helping clients with their reactions to those. And then I've got the 2-year-old and 4-year-old and their own separate issues that they're, bringing to the table. So it's just making sure that I'm taking that quiet reflection time and kind of carving out time to sit or be with myself or be in nature.
Yeah, I think just listening to all that you say there, I think that work-life harmony is a really good saying, isn't it? I think there, because you've got lots of different moving parts there, but you've got them all moving in the right way, I guess. But more importantly, you're really thinking about the things that you're doing. By the sounds of it, is that the question I asked originally, I guess, is that you do need to think about how you need to perform at a high level and the things you need to do that create your headspace to be successful. Is that? It sounds like you spent some time thinking about those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think of it just like any high performance player in a sport. So LeBron James has rest days and stretch and relaxation and rejuvenate. And so I think building that into my own schedule helps me to be fully present and available to my clients who I serve. So I think that that's a big, important part of an overall schedule, and just being intentional about what you take on and what you say yes to. And another thing is I have had to become, in the last 4 or 5 years, a really good delegator. So I was very much like, I think that's being like a young woman in this industry. It's like, I can do everything and saying yes to everything. And I don't need help. Like, I've got this. And so I think that that's something I've had to learn in the last few years. And that's really actually helped me perform significantly better, is really thinking about what is my highest and best use and how do I spend my time? And so that has meant saying no to the clients that aren't the right fit. It's saying these aren't the activities that really I should be ultimately handling. I have people on my team who can, and I need to ask for that help. It's asking for help at home and saying, I can't do it all. I can't cook 7 nights a week and keep the house clean and, do everything for school for what the kids need for their classrooms. And so I have to be able to choose what I can, do, and then hire help for some other things. So maybe order in meals or have our house cleaned and hire teammates that can help take on some of that work and delegate to each of those people so that I can be really intentional about, the 24 hours I have in a day and spending that like high level work with clients, and ultimately with my family, spending that a lot more focused and drilled in on what I want to spend my time doing and not necessarily doing everything for everyone.
That sounds really impressive. So all these things I'm listening to you going, how do you even, you're going for walks, you're drinking lots of water, you're doing your food, you're looking after a 4 and 2-year-old, you do it similar to your clients, but you also do some pro bono work, I believe, for women in your community. Is that right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Because I think I'd imagine a bit about what you do and the importance of that, I guess, for you and as in terms of your purpose in life, I would imagine. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So my pro bono work has shifted a little bit. Who I serve now, I try to do this mostly virtually, just to balance my time a little bit better. The pro bono clients that I serve now, typically, I like to help people who are young widows and young widowers. So empathizing with people who are maybe my age or similar age that have young children that have just dealt with a loss. And there's a lot to just uncover and dig out, and a lot of support that's needed. organizing finances and figuring out next steps. So that's a population I love to serve. A second population that I have more recently engaged with in the last few years is couples who are facing infertility and needing to maybe budget in really expensive fertility treatments and balancing out, do I, raid my house equity? Do I borrow from my 401k to make this family happen? And those are really hard decisions to make.
Huge, yeah.
So as somebody who had dealt with infertility and went through fertility treatments and seeing that through both the emotional and financial aspects of that, it really called me to serve people who are in that similar position to help support them through some of these really tough decisions that really come with balancing out those decisions. So right now, I would say those are my two populations that I serve more. Previously, where I had spent some time was serving women who were either in domestic violence shelters or they were houseless. And so there are different shelters through the church that we belong to and a board that I serve through our church that ultimately helped me to help women get organized and have some of the financial basics and foundations ready to go, navigate through some of the different benefits that are available to them, and help support getting them back on their feet. And I care deeply about those causes, and I donate to them financially, but going and spending my time in those shelters hasn't fit in my current phase of life right now. So that's something I'd love to return back to. And I think that's what you're referring to, because that was on my Investopedia page for the Top 100 Advisor award that I had won. And that was one of the things a couple of years ago that was highlighted there. But those are some different populations that I've cared deeply about. And it's important to me to continue to give back. Not only is it a great learning exercise, if you roll up your sleeves and help a widower sit down and just make sense of their financial life and get organized and move through the probate process and deal with beneficiary forms, and you're with them doing that, you will be a better advisor to all of your clients on estate planning readiness and organization and documenting your wishes and truly seeing what a gift it is to have all of that set up for your person or your people who are going to be settling your affairs. And so helping people who've been through maybe they've escaped a violent home and now they're on their own and trying to just figure out what their financial picture looks like. It helps you to serve your own clients better as well. So some of those different perspectives have really helped me become a better advisor to every type of client that I serve.
That is absolutely amazing. I love that. Honestly, I was getting a bit emotional listening to that, because I think anyone that's been involved in anyone that's been in any of those circumstances, having some support and advice to make you feel safe more than anything is an amazing thing. So I think that in itself is what high performance is about, is that, yeah, you're doing things for yourself, earning money, creating a family, but wow, I mean, that's an amazing thing for anyone to do. So I really, really applaud you on that. It's fantastic. It made me a bit emotional listening to that then. I think it's fantastic. So, so that's good. So obviously you've 15 years, you've been very successful, got a family, now you're building this book and you're building a team. How has the industry changed is probably my first question, from when you entered as a female and now 19 years later as a female mother. How's the industry changed for the better from what you're seeing, and what does it need to do more to create a world where it shouldn't matter whether you're male or female or whatever to enter this industry? Yeah. How's it changed for the better, and what needs to happen more in your view, living in it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's changed a lot. When I entered this industry, young, blonde, female, I felt like I had to be so competent and so cold. You can either show up as cold and competent, or you can show up as kind of warm and maybe not show up as intelligent. Sometimes that's kind of the impression that people will get, is that if you are showing up with kindness and empathy, that sometimes you don't have that set of knowledge behind you. So I felt like at least the first decade of my career was learn everything you can, be the smartest, be the best, grow, be better than the boys. I worked in big companies that had sales competitions. I'm like, I'm going to get up on stage. I'm going to show them, So I felt like how I felt in this industry is different than how I feel now, because I think there's been a big shift in our industry as well, where I think in the last few years, there's been a lot more focus on the emotion around money because there are a lot of great software tools that do the math for you. I don't need to sit in front of a client with a calculator anymore. And so helping to work through the math, that's kind of table stakes where you can build the financial modeling, you can build the investment analysis for clients in a minute. And what makes somebody different in this industry is the ability to connect with them and to help them connect with the emotion around money. And a few years ago, I was at a conference and I learned that there was such thing as a financial therapist. And I said, oh, this is pretty cool. Because probably some of my clients could handle, deal with that if they're going through a divorce or maybe they're combining their household and getting married. And we've got two different personalities there, or big inheritance, or some kind of big financial event, job loss or a new job, those different types of events. Maybe they need a financial therapist. And I started to incorporate one in our practice. And I very quickly realized that everybody needs one. So in our onboarding process, we have the person she's a financial behavior specialist on our team.
Okay.
She can't technically practice therapy in all the states, but that's her background. And so as a behavior specialist, she's really kind of coming in and saying, let me help understand these clients, maybe biases and beliefs around money, some things that are really important in their goals and values. And so as we're building that financial plan, we really have this new lens to kind of view our client base where, if you talk to a client enough times, if you've been dealing with a client for years, you generally get to know them well and you can build them a better financial plan because you understand what's important to them and what their priorities are, and those surface over time. But my thought was, how do I get there faster with my new clients I'm just getting to know? Like, I can't spend years getting to know you to build your best financial plan. I want to do it right away. And so we really kind of developed more of a process to drill in and get to know our clients better as we're onboarding them, so we can craft a plan that honors their priorities and honors their values and honors how they feel about money and what's important to them and those biases that they hold. And so that's something that has changed in my practice, where I felt like I would show up to a meeting in my 20s and I'd have to show somebody how smart I was and talk about the investments and talk over their head a little bit just to get them to see me as somebody who is competent. And now I feel like, okay, that will come through, but I need to connect with them first. And so my approach in this business has definitely changed in the last 5 years.
Amazing. That's great to hear. And what about the future of the industry? You mentioned around the emotional side of things, which is, we've got AI and everyone's saying, basically, if you read the news, there'll be no jobs at all in the future at all based on AI. But how do you see the future of financial advice and what you need to be a high performer utilizing the advanced technology that we've got? How do you see it panning out in the future? And then you can listen back to this in 3 to 4 years' time to see if you were right, obviously, see if you were correct. But yeah, what do you see as being the future of financial advice and where it's going?
Yeah, I think that we will need to spend our more of our time being human and connecting with our clients and a lot less time staring at tax returns. Because right now I see the software is developing so quickly to read all of the client's data and put it into software tools. Used to be, we'd spend so much time building a financial plan and analyzing the investment statements and analyzing the estate planning documents and tax returns and insurance documents and their budget. And I think of all these manual things. Yesterday, I just had to bring up this big spreadsheet I used to use to help clients analyze, their employee benefits. So which healthcare plan should they choose? Like all on his, all on hers, combination of the two, like what's the best way to go about that? Like, what? These AI tools are creating such a faster way of processing this data and making sense of it and being able to read for what you're looking for, that what I see advisors in the future is spending very little time on the data analysis and data input into these tools, and that the faster you can adopt the best technology that's out there, the more time you can spend connecting with clients. I still feel that people want that face-to-face or person-to-person support that only an advisor can build. And so we need to have that background and that knowledge to then take all of that data and relate it back to that person and help them feel less stressed about their finances and more at peace. And I think people still need to deliver that, but we need to turn more into like dialing up the people skills is really the most important thing. And so I'll have young advisors come to me and say, which designation should I take? I've taken like 8 financial professional designations and, which one is most important to study and what should I study? What should I study? And that's important to have all of that technical knowledge. You'll build that over time, but the best skills to develop in our industry are those people skills, those connecting skills, those relating skills, the empathy, the listening, all of those different skill sets. And if you can do that, and if you care, then when a client that you care about asks you about a tax question, you're going to go research it and you're going to use these fantastic tools and you're going to ask AI and you're going to be able to come up with that answer, but you're going to be able to relate it and package it back to them in a way that helps to soften that news. Like I have to tell somebody later today that they're going to have a $200,000 surprise tax bill. Not really a big surprise, but the size of it is a surprise to them. And so being able to, yes, crunch all of those numbers and calculate that and hopefully try to reduce that a little bit, but also being able to enter into this conversation with them and leave them feeling like they were helped and served and comforted and have a plan built and saying, hey, we've got a plan to address this and cover it and you're fine. And people just want to know that they're okay and that their needs are being covered. And so I think that those are the skills that people ultimately need to develop in this industry.
That's going to be a difficult conversation for you later on. I was just thinking, where do you start with that? I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is we've got a plan. The bad news is, it's not an easy conversation. But yeah, I think you're right. I think the skills are very different, aren't they? That will be needed in the future. But it sounds like a lot of those you've already adapted into your working practice in the way they operate anyway. So, one of the things I always ask the guests is, for any advisors coming through, what book would you recommend to them to read? For any advisor that's looking to perform at a higher level or in any way or form, you mentioned that you do a lot of reading or audiobooks. What book would you recommend to any advisors looking to up their level?
Yeah. I mean, if somebody has not read any books about this industry, The Psychology of Money is kind of that baseline book. I think that everybody should read Morgan Housel. I haven't read his new book that just came out. I think it just came out last month. It's on my list. But I think that anything that has to do with, anything written by Daniel Crosby, from a behavioral finance perspective, just looking at more of the behavioral finance industry leaders and what those books are. At the end of Brendan Fraser's podcast, The Human Side of Money, he asks all of his guests that same question. And there almost needs to be a book club for the answers that people give you or the answers that people give him. Most recently on his podcast, I told him the book Quiet by Susan Cain was something that really helped me understand introverts, because as somebody who's shown up in the world as an extrovert my whole life, I didn't really understand that power of introverts or how to communicate or relate to or listen to introverts. And so there's some things I've changed in my practice ever since reading the book Quiet about sending people questions ahead of time or preparing them ahead for the conversation and not putting people on the spot. Because as an extrovert, I'm okay being put on the spot, but introverts maybe aren't as comfortable with that, and you're not going to necessarily have as good of an engagement or communication or conversation with them. So being able to, if I want to pull out some of those goal and value conversations or preferences or where I want to take them with money in their lifetime, sometimes giving people the questions ahead of time in an agenda, communicating with them and letting them know this is what we're going to be talking about, or giving them the opportunity to sit down and write their answers and reflect and not put them on the spot. That's been very useful for me.
Amazing. Emily, I think what you've done and what you've achieved is an inspiration to many. I think there'll be a lot of people that listen or watch this podcast that will hopefully be inspired and think, I can do that if she can, and maybe you've inspired many. So I think congratulations on what you're doing and what you've achieved so far and where you're going. Anyone that wants to contact you, I'll put your contact details on the podcast, but you've been a great guest today and I really appreciate your time and your insight into being a high performing financial advisor and mother and all the other things that you're performing in life at. So congratulations on your achievement so far. I look forward to following you the rest of your journey.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you for listening to High Performance Financial Advisor. If you found today's episode valuable, make sure you subscribed on your favourite podcast platform so you don't miss the next one. Until next time, keep performing.